Hello, you stonkingly beautiful people. Today I'm going to share a bit of gossip that I got from the emissaries. I'll tell you all about it on the other side. So whilst I was communing with the emissaries, I said, come on, tell me something that I don't know. Give me a bit of goss. I didn't say that. I said, just tell me something that you've never told me before. Give me a bit of an insight into something that I don't know. They said, okay, well, we'll tell you this. We've said this before, but we haven't made it absolutely clear. What they said is that we, as the emissaries, do not know everything. We assume that those on the other side have access to every bit of information, like they know everything. And the emissary said that we don't. They said, in fact, we know little more than you, and especially about the earth plane and what's happening and how this rolls out. The only thing that they can do is read the energies at any one time. They said, we are only allowed to know on this side what we're allowed to know, what's within our remit. And it's for that reason that many times we say we can't speak on that subject. We can't talk about that subject because we don't have the information. And it would only be their idea of what it could be or a supposition. And they said, we don't want to do that. That's not our remit. So I was thinking, well, okay, if you don't know everything, because you know that they say that when we cross over, then we remember everything and we know everything. You know, I often say, well, you know, the Jehovah's Witnesses, when they get to the other side, they're going to find out the truth and all of that. And I said, so what do we get to know when we go to the other side then? If you know, as the emissaries, you don't know everything, what do we know? And what they said is that when we cross over to the other side, what we remember is everything about us, about our own being. They said that we get to the other side and suddenly we've got access to the entire journey that we have been on. That's all. We don't get access to everything else, all the other information, only about us. And they said, and it's from that information as we look and we learn across our journey and see what we've done and where we failed and where we succeeded. They said, based on that, that allows us to make our next plan based on that information that we have access to. And so we don't know everything and we won't know everything. What they said is that as we progress through levels, then we do get more access to more information. I suppose being like in the Masons, isn't it? You know, as you go up, you give you more information. It's not like being in the Masons, really, is it? It's a bad simile, isn't it? But we get access to us, and that's all. And that's all. And they were saying it's for that reason that we have to be very careful about those people who are professing to have access to information that perhaps you would think, oh, well, that's like outside of the normal. This is, you know, I mean, how many people have channeled disasters? Nostradamus. I mean, he was a boring bastard, wasn't he? He was not boring. He was miserable as sin. I mean, did he ever say anything good was going to happen? It was always seemed to be bad stuff that was going to happen, according to Nostradamus. And there's another school of thought that says that everything he said was made up and he didn't even exist. However, but he was a bit miserable, wasn't he? And a lot of what he said didn't happen either. And also, you know, that guy, what was his name? The one that David Wilcock thinks he's the reincarnation of. He did a lot of very negative forecasting as well. He did loads of good work and he was healing people and telling them what they should eat to cure the thingies. But he also gave loads and loads of very, very negative future projections that didn't come true. And I see this pattern. Do you see this pattern? This pattern of forecasting the worst. It seems to be very prevalent. Now, if you look at the forecasts for the change of the climate, yeah? Since, I mean, I think in the 60s they were saying that the Ice Age was coming. And then it didn't. And so they changed it and they said then it was the hole in the ozone that was going to cause God knows what. And then that didn't transpire. And then they started saying, well, it's going to heat up. And I think in the 80s, they said in 10 years, it's always a window of 10 years, isn't it? Just enough to keep everyone as miserable as fuck. 10 years, everything's going to be a desert or whatever. 10 years came and they've just kept on. What they've done is they've just kept on with that narrative. Although then they realised that they couldn't get away with it because they were skewing the graphs, and there's a point where they couldn't skew it anymore. And so they said, hey, well, what we'll do is we'll just call it the change. Rather than warming, it's a change. And so now we're in this part. And of course, they've got all this technology where they can fart around with the weather. And, all of that's coming out. This is the year of revelation, by the way. This is the year that we're going to see. I think the second half of this year is going to be immense. I think it's going to be immense. It's going to be pretty horrible at times, I believe. I was listening to, Pluto's regressing into Capricorn in October and November. Interesting months, are they not? And one of the bits of advice that I heard somebody give who was looking at the horoscopes for this year was saying, just because it's going back into Capricorn, which is back into where we've been for the last 20 years or whatever, people will think that we're going back to the madness again. But we're not. It's very short-lived. It's only there for 2 months, and then it's fully into Aquarius, and then we're into it'll still have its challenges, but we're into a different time. And so this doom and gloom has been around for a long time. And so if somebody's channeling doom and gloom, if somebody's channeling something that's ridiculous, like totally unbelievable, then just take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah? Use your discernment. If the emissaries, I'm not taking away from the fact that maybe there are other beings, other light beings that do have a different remit and have access to different information. It's like a little pocket. They can only access what they can access. So maybe there are other groups that do access other stuff. Who am I to say? I don't know. I've got no idea. But we've got to be very careful with what we take on board. Listen to it, measure it out, judge it. And I think the way that we measure things is this. That in the Bible it says, if the prophet prophesies and that prophecy fails, they are not prophets. Okay? Nice and clear. Obvious, isn't it? If they say that something's going to happen and it doesn't, then they are false prophets. And we must run away from them. And I think that's the proof of the pudding, isn't it? It's if somebody's saying, hey, this is going to happen next week, October the 20th, blah, blah, blah. And we've had that, haven't we? We had that for a number of years. Not so much now. Everybody's got a little bit of egg on their face now and they're kind of shutting the fuck up a bit. But they're the ones that dates. Remember, the timeline is constantly changing and flexing and skewing. And so it's very difficult to pin down dates. The emissaries will not do it. They don't have access to it. They never, ever talk about. They always say time doesn't exist where we are. And so all we've got to do is use our discernment, be careful, and understand, I suppose, that the only being that knows everything is the one that started it all off in the first place. This is a game. And in the game, or a mystery game, which is what it is, you don't get given, you only get given clues. You don't get given the script. You just get the clues and you've got to make the best out of them as you can. And so we shouldn't expect to know everything, and we shouldn't expect others to know everything. And I think what I saw was a lot of people at the time, we were desperate for good news, weren't we? We were desperate to know when that demic with a plan was going to end and stuff like that. And we wanted dates, and everybody was giving dates. And those dates weren't happening. Some of them were. I remember the only person, I'll tell you who, the only person, that's why I still listen to him today, the only person was an astrologer called Robert from Barcelona, who said, by this point, it will change. It will stop. And he was exactly right. And it wasn't that he was channeling anything. He was just looking at the alignment of the stars. That's all. And I think they're pretty good. If you ever had your chart done, and a personal chart for you, you'll know that it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So I think they're the things, the solid things. I believe that they're all put there, and they're part of this, the dynamic in which we live. and they tell the story, okay? But, you know, you can't say for definite. It's kind of like themes that you get, isn't it? With astrology, it's a theme. This is a theme, this is a theme. But certainly what Robert says, and I do listen to him because I trust what he says, because he's reading the script that's up there. And he said that there is nothing, that the baddies don't have the power anymore. They're in disarray. And he said for the next 4 years, there is nothing that could be likened to what we've had. And of course, because we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and Pluto's moving into Aquarius, it's going to be different. As I say, it's going to have its challenges, and it always will be. These are challenging times, but something is shifting. And this year, I think, is going to be the culmination. I think so many things are going to come out. We're going to see so many revelations. We're in the period of revelation. It's going to be gobsmacking for many, many, many people. But hey, let's roll with it. Be patient. We trust that this plan is solid. It's a covenant. It's written in stone. And so it's going to play out. There we are. So I'd like to hear your comments as well. What do you think? What do you think about all of that? And I love you all, and I'll speak to you all later. Bye-bye.